Mother, Father, Source, I call upon you. Great Spirit, I call upon you. Higher Self, I call upon you. Divine Light and only Light, I call upon you. I connect all of me to the Divine Grid and only the Divine Grid.
We've been wired in these human bodies to get these answers from the external, from like a success, from, a future point. And it's like, no, that future point is also happening right now. And we're just pulling in the energy of it to make it part of our reality. And I think it sounds so complicated and people want to make it so complicated, but it feels so simple when we just know, oh, it's all right here, right now. It's all connected. I don't have to be anywhere else but right here. And then that helps me connect right into everything. And I do think the heart is an anchor point for that. And we're learning how to come back to
Dharma. We have the way we live our life in harmony with the universe. Reality creation might presuppose, okay, I'm going to go out there and make something happen. But the intersection point that I enjoy sharing with others is that it's actually somewhere kind of neither these two, but both these two at the same time. And within all paradoxes, ultimate truth, I find, is found because it exists just beyond our mental perception.
Alrighty, everyone. Welcome back to the third, if I can count right, third episode of Omni-Awakened Evolution. Today, we're going to be talking about all things Ascension. And we have with us Danielle Lynn, Sarah Shook, and Natalia Grace, all of which I've been following for some time and very super excited to be talking to today. So let's start off with some basic questions. I have you guys on my screen and we'll go from left to right. Just go through and kind of tell like what your basic teachings are and what you're trying to get out and how you're trying to get it out.
All right. Well, very rad. So I'm Danielle Lynn, and my experience that I'm currently facilitating, I call it true self alchemy. So very simply put, it is an experience of personal embodiment being fully living as your truest, most resonant self. It's not a conceptual experience. It is something that we discover, that we remember moment to moment. So much of my own, you could say, shares with everybody around the world is just me in the experience of embodiment, acting as a reflection point, as a mirror for everyone else to recognize within themselves their own authentic anchors. Because even though my way of living, my way of being may be vastly different in appearance to someone else's, I perceive that we all have these interconnected points of resonating, of coherence that we can recognize in another when someone is living in accordance with, again, that true self. So I love to create videos that align with the experience of synchronicity, which means people find the video at a precise timing for them. And it's very fun because in a lot of ways, it is an embodied experience of living in the field of synchronicity. Because when I am creating the messages, I'm really co-creating them with everybody else who is involved. And so altogether, we find ourselves at these precise moments on YouTube, maybe on some of my other posts, other channels, and it becomes a way for people to recognize it's not just Danielle putting out messages, but I myself am trusting my inner guidance. I'm finding these messages. Maybe they're connecting with other very cool creators. And so that's part of my current experiment experience. Thank you for asking, Felix.
Yeah, automatic, no problem. So you're big on synchronicity then. That's kind of part of your whole spiel, yeah?
It's a big part of what I share with people. You know, I have an intersection of practices. Like, for example, I'm a big fan of many elements of Taoism, huge Alan Watts fan, things like this. But I also teach a lot about reality creation, right? So it's funny because it's sort of a paradox. In the Taoist tradition, we have Dharma, we have the way we live our life in harmony with the universe. Reality creation might presuppose, okay, I'm going to go out there and make something happen. But the intersection point that I enjoy sharing with others is that it's actually somewhere kind of neither these two, but both these two at the same time. And within all paradoxes, ultimate truth, I find, is found because it exists just beyond our mental perception.
Yeah, I love that. That's a super good point. And me being a Gemini, I really have to kind of push myself into that direction because I'm a go out and doer. Like, yeah, if you ain't getting dirty and out on the grind, you ain't getting nothing done, you know? And Spirit had to run my head into a few brick walls before I figured out, hey, you can kind of coast and kick it and let things come to you at the same time. So I'm totally resonating with that message. Sarah, let's have you get in there. Kind of give us a little mini rundown on what you got going on.
Sure. I'd say my focus right now is really helping people reconnect to their soul and that soul level within themselves. You know, why are you here in this lifetime? What's the energy, the gifts, the keys that you're bringing forward to help serve humanity? And reconnecting to that truth and that heart space to be able to live and create from that space within ourselves. So a lot of information that I bring forward is geared in that direction, but also helping us, you know, step into this power within ourselves, this remembrance of our soul as we move forward so that we can live from that space. And just connecting into that intuitive version of ourselves and learning to trust in that space. And it's all about, you know, going within to bring the without. And I just feel like that's work that I've done in my life and has really helped propel me forward. So I always want to help people step into more of their truth, who they are in their power.
Right. And so once again, kind of playing into the bringing stuff into you as opposed to going out and grabbing it, just being in alignment and building from the inside out.
Yeah, it's all already there. We just have to dive into that within ourselves, and that gets projected outwards.
Yeah. And so I know you channel a little bit. You do bring in the angels, but so how much of this is your previous studiousness and how much of this is like what you've learned from channeling?
Oh gosh, I learned so much from channeling. And then, I mean, one of my favorite things to do too is probably like soul regressions and diving into the information that my soul already holds and from other lifetimes and things. And then I also work with a group of ETs who are Arcturian. And they're like system builders. So they give a lot of information about that kind of stuff and kind of how we're wired, how the universe is wired, things like that. But they also, in channeling, you know, everything, it's being brought through me. So even other channelers, it's their resonance, and they use the knowledge that you already have to kind of connect dots for people. So I use a lot of like metaphors and things. I'm not a verbal channel. I would call myself more of like a conscious or intuitive channel. So yeah, they're using kind of things that I already know to help bring more information forward. So it's a team effort, I guess.
Yeah, it's super awesome. I mean, to some degree, we're all channeling, right? We're all bringing through some type of message where you're pulling it from the Akashic or an angel or an ET. The information is not coming, or even from your higher self, you know? So, but yeah, I love that. Natalia from Peru.
Yes.
Give us your background and what you're doing down there in Peru.
Yeah, well, first of all, thank you for having us here and for having me here. Really happy to be a part of this. Um, Honestly, I don't like labels. Like, it's something that I found myself struggling with to kind of put a name to what I do. But I would really say that what I am or what I do is that I'm a translator of consciousness. So I feel like I support people decode and translate this path, the consciousness path. And what I feel that I truly work with is the archetype of the warriors of God, the way showers, the one that are here to really be the gatekeepers of that divine grid. Because the way that, for me, I see this world, or I kind of break it down, is that there's the divine grid and there's the fallen grid, the fallen consciousness, the fallen matrix. And a lot of us on this path is like awakening to that reality that, okay, we have those divine codes within us, and the world is not what it seems. We see beyond the veil. But yet there's all these different distortions and illusions and the plugs that we have into the fallen grid. But what are we going to do? So this is where it comes down to awakening that inner shaman. I really call it that. Like, I feel we're all our shamans within, but we give our power away to a lot of things. So a big purpose of mine is to bring people to remember that you have that shaman within you. You are a warrior, because this journey is it's just literally not for everybody. It takes a lot of courage, a lot of strength to be able to go down into those pathways of, I call it hell really, but seeing our own stuff, our own shit, our own distortions, our own programming, and reclaiming our light to choose the path of spirit. Because honestly, this path is only the one of surrendering to spirit, and yeah, choosing the heart at the end of the day. Yeah, and so a little bit of what I do. I'm based in the Sacred Valley of Peru. I've been here for 10 years, and that's where my shamanic path started. I do a lot of work online, so I have like my YouTube where I place those, transmissions, but also do quantum energy work, which is something that I received, the blueprint that I received back when I had my light body activate in 2018. And I also hold a lot of in-person journeys, which are vision quests, shamanic vision quests, for people to reclaim that warrior energy within them. Yeah.
Super, super dope. And you do that through Temescal, right?
One part of it, yeah. The Temescal is like a medicine. Yeah, very special medicine of mine. Yeah.
So what is the difference between ayahuasca and Temescal? Is there even very much?
It depends, honestly, because one of the main things we hear people say is that, at least the Temescal, that the ceremonial space that we hold, because Temescal, like, for people that don't know, is like the shamanic sweat lodge, but it's been very diluted, like not the way the ancestors used to hold it. The ancestors used to hold it in a very ceremonial space, which is really a rebirth, transcendental, 4 hours, sometimes a whole night of being, inside that process. And so, yeah, a lot of people call it like it's, stronger than ayahuasca. But in reality, what I want to say, why I love it so much, is that because it reminds you that you are the medicine. You are not taking any enhancer. So ayahuasca, you're taking, plant medicine. Whereas with Temescal, it reminds you, you are the medicine, and it's allowing your spirit to come through. And it comes out with such an integration and groundedness that you're not confused, because sometimes people on medicine, they can be like, oh, did I really see this? What am I going to do with all that? Whereas here, it's like you go through a very transcendental experience where huge activation, people can regress, release trauma, but you come out very in the body.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, because I know a lot of people who, exactly like you said, have said, oh man, my Temescal journey was like way crazier than my ayahuasca. And I'm like, wow, yeah. How is that? So that's pretty trippy. Looks like we lost Danielle here. Let's give her a second to come back. There she is.
Greetings. Natalia had so much potency that my entire app froze.
For a ball of fire.
Let's go to the heart of the recording, and that is Ascension. So can you guys kind of tell in your own words, like, what do you feel the Ascension is for you? What we're going through as part of that Ascension.
So for me, we are actually, I would invite everyone to zoom out a bit, because while we are in a perceived ascension process, it is part of the greater scope of reality we're in, which is more of this cyclical process, a spiral process. And what I perceive is happening at this time is we're having a remembering. Many who have spoken here, I think Sarah and Natalia both mentioned, we're having a remembering, which is not just a mental thought process, but literally a reconsolidation, configuring of our inner selves, of our, as I call it, the true self. And so the ascension process, from my perspective, is a natural symptom of what happens when we truly remember and embody who we are, because we're no longer acting out of disjointed parts of ourselves in a thought of what we need to be. So I think, as mentioned, the falling away of the perceived older matrix, older grid, that was, you could say, built out of alignment with the natural harmony of the self. Well, as everybody returns to the remembering of the self, the natural system within us and interconnected with all of us rises. It's not something that has to be externally created or thought of. It's a natural result of each of us adhering to our inner coherence, living from the heart, gut, mind, unified way of being. And in a very practical sense, it's a return to a lot more of a natural way of being, which doesn't necessarily exclude things like technology. It just means that we're no longer confusing external tools or ideologies for our own inner truth. And therefore, we're able to move with a lot more discernment. We're able to co-create more clearly. We're able to live in a way we find far more enjoyable. And so I'll pause there. I would say that's a big view of what I see from a broad strokes of this process that we're all going through right now.
Yeah, and I love that you say it's a symptom. You know what I mean? Like a symptom of the remembering. And so I feel like in the ascension, there's symptoms and then symptoms of symptoms and then going on down. And that's kind of what we're working through backwards to get into that clarity of, co-creation and all that. Sarah, let's get your take on ascension and how you perceive it.
Sure, I love Danielle's explanation. I feel like I want to take that and then I'm going to... I always love to go galactic with things, so...
I love it.
For me, I feel like, yes, it's this remembering, coming back to the knowing of self and that heart space. But if, I feel like a lot I've been told about, like these galactic wars and things that are happening, that they've kind of, this energy has infiltrated these other places. And we have kind of taken on this task of, we've come here to see the dark, to understand how it works and not let it take us over. We're coming back to, yes, this remembrance of self in this duality so that we can help these other versions of ourself, whether that's in Lyra or Orion or wherever. We're coming back into this knowing of our truth and this love and living from that space. And I think love isn't always what we expect it to be. It's not always this self-sacrifice thing. It is very much an honoring of self and knowing the difference between what truly is us and what is not. And so I kind of feel like the ascension is releasing any like attachment and drama and feelings of, I'm gathering who I am from the external. And again, coming back into, I receive it all from in here so that we can step into, the space of truth for ourselves. And I feel like it's more than just the human experience and the earth experience that's ascending. We're moving up so that we can help and build like a brand new universe. I feel like it's a whole collective experience, outside of just the humans.
No, I agree 100% because the first episode we did was on galactic contact, right? So I had 3 prominent ET channels on, and that was a big part of the conversation, is that the work we're doing here and how it affects so above, as above, so below, right? And that's not just from heaven to earth, but from the galaxy and the universe to earth as well. You know what I mean? Your turn, Natalia.
Yeah, it's interesting because the very first thing I find that I feel is important to like kind of clarify, and there's a lot of like misconception in the spiritual community about what ascension is, that even it created this mind trap where people are like, am I ascending? Am I having this? Am I gonna reach something? And I feel that's the very first thing, like that's so important to ground, is that it's not a place that you're going to get to. It's a phenomena. It's not something that I have to do this and I have to do that. And if I'm not doing this, I'm not ascending. Like it became a bit of a hierarchy. And that's something really I don't like to see happening, because it is a mental trap that one can find themselves in. It becomes like a mental construct, rather than allowing and understanding what this process is. And for me, the way that I break down ascension, because again, if we are saying we are ascending, I see it as it's an ascension, but also descension. Because what are we ascending to? We are ascending into higher states of consciousness. This is really what it is. And again, descending back into the body. So it's that embodiment of divine consciousness, where body becomes consciousness. But if I were to like even just simplify it, is that it's this reclamation of our own divine essence and reclamation of the divine grid. So when there was the lock, because there was this huge lock on Earth, right, with the fallen grid. When we say, okay, like now Earth is ascending, or there's this ascension process, is that basically it's that reclamation of allowing the codes of the divine grid to come through, whether it's through, the environment around us, the Earth itself, but also through us and through our own nature. And it's literally like that opening and that activation of energetic base living. That's how I see it. Because the moment you're saying, okay, I'm going through that journey and that process, you have moved out of that linear thinking, that linear operation model that you're just, basing your life through your five senses. And all of a sudden now you've opened up to an intelligence that is this higher intelligence, this divine intelligence that is within you. All of that information within and outside that is just coming through. And that is what I call like the quantum existence. So literally for me, that is what ascension is. It's literally stepping into quantum existence and energetic base living.
Right. That's a great explanation. Also, I love that. I agree with you 100%. There's a lot of shit going on in the community where people are taking it like too far to the wall and trying to make a process out of it. And I'm like, dude, I agree in the sense that if we continue to push it in that, make it a 1, 2, 3, follow these steps and you ascend, we're going to become a religion real quick. You know what I mean? And people are going to get caught up in dogma, and it's just going to be the same thing, copy, paste, repeat. So I prefer to use the awakening, but at the same time, awakening and ascension are in some degree different things. You know what I mean? It's different paths to the same point, but I believe there's different attributes to each of those. That's crazy. And then, so, one of the things I view in the awakening is really coming to truth to what we actually are, right? Because to ascend and, like you guys are talking about, connect to the divine and recenter ourselves and get into the co-creation of things, you first have to realize that you're a soul that came from somewhere, and that somewhere is the creator, right? We're just all pieces and parts. Every last thing you look at on this planet, we're all part of the creator, and everything is. What I would like to hear your guys' perspective on that, because for me, like what really gets me like insane is when people say this isn't even real, it's fake, it's all fake, and I'm like, hold on. For me, there's the other side, which is the spirit side, right? your soul and all that before you incarnate. And then you have the incarnate side. And when you take those two halves, of which I view as the two halves of God, right? The incarnate and the not incarnate. And that constitutes all of reality. We're really here. We're really doing something. How do you guys feel about that perspective?
I really love exploring this. I'll actually start with a little bit of my background, because when I was being raised, I had parents who were deeply spiritual. So like, let's just say they deeply focused on spiritual topics. But one of the things in the spiritual group I grew up in was there was a lot of focus on like transcending this reality. Like, let's get out of this reality. Let's get out of this form. And even as a kid, I was kind of like, well, why? Well, then why did we come here in the first place? And it felt very strange and disassociating to me at the time. And, through the very many years of doing my own spiritual explorations and, discovering within what was true to me, I came to a very similar place that you did, Felix, in terms of like, on one level, we could say, all right, this is a dream. And in my own, part of my own practice is something that I had deeply understood in a very practical way, was that we're living in a fractalized reality, kind of like you said, Felix, as above, so below. But I also started to understand the correlations between the most simple seeming forms of reality to the most expanded galactic forms, and that we are really meeting ourselves at multiple levels. And so then I started to realize, well, even if this is a dream, just like how I dream, then it's a dream that still has reality for me. There's still an experience, an embodied experience that I'm having here. And more importantly, I chose to focus my consciousness at this point, or we all chose, right, to embody and be in the body, be in this experience of consciousness. And so something that I started to realize was there was a lot of, at least for me growing up, spiritual disassociation with reality that was masked as ascension or moving higher, but was really just disconnecting oneself from this reality, from the body, from the experience. And so I started to get more curious, and I started to, instead of just constantly trying to meditate to leave the space, my meditation started taking the forms of directly connecting with nature, of sitting with trees, of touching leaves, touching grass, so to speak. And part of what that assisted me with was I started to have a more intimate relationship, not just with nature, but with reality in general, with my inner and outer reality. And in some ways you could say it softened my heart a bit. It softened my perception to realize that everything, from a certain sense, is as real or as unreal as anything else. But if we were to perceive our actual consciousness as the place where we as the divine have chosen to focus our energy in this precise period of time, then being completely and fully present with it in each and every moment was sort of the gift and the transmutation of the reality experience. Beyond conceptualization of what we're here to do or not do, the actual embodiment, me sitting in the grass, me fully breathing in and enjoying the moment, was my act of love. And in a lot of ways, I started to understand that was, if we're looking at it from a place of doing more, like that was doing more for a heart opening ascension process than me attempting to intellectualize the process and fight my way through it. And so I simply offer that as one of my contemplation points of that gave me an aha in reality when I was playing with it.
Yeah, we're eye to eye on that one. I'm being a Gemini. I'm very grounded. The strongest communication I would say that I have with my guides is that they drop angel numbers, because I'm just like stubborn. I try to meditate, but my brain just never shuts down. I'm always thinking. For some reason, it feels like I wake up and I was thinking before I woke up. I'm like, dude, can I just wake up to like not a thought once, So I'm super grounded, and it kind of, when you come into this ascension thing, you look from like that perspective, like, oh, well, there's out of body experiences and astral projection, and everybody's talking to their guides and angels and all kinds of shit, and I'll be honest, I'm just 3D as fuck, dude. It's like my feet are on the ground and I'm just here like every other human. So it's hard not to intellectualize it, right? But exactly what you're saying, like connecting with nature and just letting go and knowing that there's an underlying energy there that you are connected to, whether you're in immediate communication or not. You just let that come in, and it's that's where you find your flow. And so let's go to you, Sarah, and get your perspective on that whole spiel.
Yeah. Wait, can you repeat the question? I want to make sure I'm answering it correctly.
So we're kind of talking about being like embodied here. Like a lot of people, we were saying how they want to get out of the body and escape coming here, but we came here for a reason, really to experience being human,
Yeah. I hear it a lot in the spiritual community, especially, if people who might use the term like starseed or something, they're like, I want to go home. I don't like it here. And it's like, what are you talking about? Like, we're here to bring home what we call home here and like seed it here. And I also hear a lot like, when is the solar flash coming? Things like that. I'm like, we're not here to like have something come save us. This isn't about like, when are we getting to this point? I think Natalia, you said it. It's a constant progression. There is no like final destination that we're really getting to. And I think that what we're really learning is probably what we're all saying. It's about coming back to this presence, like, Danielle said, and connecting with nature, realizing like everything is right here, right now, if we put our intention and our focus on it. And there is so much around us that we don't see that is here to support us and help us in this process. Just to get like a little, weird and quantum, but like I have this lifetime with the fallen Anunnaki, and like my soul couldn't figure out something during that lifetime of how to connect back into the heart and get out of that enslavement. So it's split into 3 other lifetimes to help itself find the answer so it could like raise its consciousness. I'm one of those lifetimes. So I'm helping like a version of me in that lifetime to like, I guess, basically ascend too. So like we have all these other versions of us that are helping. Even like the guides that we work with are like versions of us. It's all super connected, but it's all right here, right now. It's all happening at the same time. I say it's a past life, but it's not. It's a concurrent life. It's something that's happening right now. And we're all like these, it's like a game of telephone. We're just passing messages to and from each other to receive that energy, to receive that consciousness. And we've been wired in these human bodies to get these answers from the external, from like a success, from, a future point. And it's like, no, that future point is also happening right now. And we're just pulling in the energy of it to make it part of our reality. And I think it sounds so complicated and people want to make it so complicated, but it feels so simple when we just know, oh, it's all right here, right now. It's all connected. I don't have to be anywhere else but right here. And then that helps me connect right into everything. And I do think the heart is an anchor point for that. And we're learning how to come back to operating from that space instead of up here, because that creates that disconnection.
Agreed. The heart is definitely an anchor point. I don't see too many people ascending who aren't into their heart space. You know what I mean? It's not, that's not a common thing these days. How do you feel, Natalia?
Yeah, gosh, that is such a big multi-dimensional subject because we can go into so many different angles and it can be very confusing. But that point of, you're saying like it's all a dream, whatever, these are all just layers of perception. I feel this is another thing with this path is that sometimes people take those general truths as like, this is it. And they just don't look at the other parts of it. It's one aspect of it. And how can we integrate it into this day-to-day reality? So that part of, being a dream, I found that it can be very gaslighting to one's own experience and like telling people that are at war or, rape or all of that. Like, yeah, it's just a dream. And you witnessed that, you witnessed that in the spiritual community. It's just so frustrating. So I feel like it's... For me, the way I see it is like going back to avatar consciousness. So if we are experiencing this realm, okay, this body is our carrier, what that is containing our energy, containing our experience, our consciousness. So if you just remember, maybe some of you listening to this, remember other experiences, existences in other planets and other realms. In reality, it's about living fully through the avatar. Like, you know, like if you look at like an alien figure or just another reality, they're in their optimal vessel experience. They're not trying to be, you know, I'm in my avatar, but, you know, I want to be an animal. I want to be a dragon. You know, like they're like, no, and they're optimizing the vessel. So they're fully utilizing what this, you know, avatar does. And I feel that that's one of the things that eventually we are to do, because we have to optimize it. And at the same time, we forgot there's a huge programming, a huge veil we've been under to believe that this, you know, vessel does that little. Just as simple as intuition or seeing through the veil. We have massive capacity to use that. And eventually, in order to utilize it, is to allow our divine intelligence, the higher self, the spirit, to come through. This is what it really is about. And I know that nature, because you mentioned that, Danielle, nature is like, the way I see it is like it holds the ancient divine codes because it hasn't been infiltrated. And that's what allows us to remember. It allows our own codes to come through. But I want to share something, because I was somebody that was so much in the la actually, and like Ascension and la and the light, and so much in here, and a lot of like cosmic consciousness, I've been in this planet and I've done this, and boom, I had my light body activate that just dropped me into my body fully, into trauma, nervous system dysregulation, immense panic. Like it was just insane, because it had to bring me back into my body. And that's been my journey. And that's when I realized I haven't been literally it's a fragmentation. If I'm not living through my body, I'm fragmented. And a lot of people maybe don't want to necessarily accept that, especially the ones that say, you know, I don't need to take care of my vessel. I can eat junk food and I can recode it energetically. And I'm like, okay, great. You know, if you can do that, awesome. But I feel it's, again, this is bypassing. Instead is understanding the frequency. You're made of codes and geometries, and your body has to be that demonstration, that walking embodiment of spirit. And the only way out is through. Because as I said, you have to live the avatar. You have to be the avatar that you're in. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I agree 100%. And I think exactly what you said, spiritual bypassing is a big part of this whole equation that we're talking about right now. And that's, you know, taking your physical corporeal body and trying to say it's not really worth the weight in gold that your soul is. You know, it's not, you know, we don't really, this is blocking me from doing something or getting somewhere. And that's 100% not the case. You know, the way I look at it is, we were souls, we were all souls at some point, right? And you chose to come here, just like every one of us has said, and that was for a reason, right? On the other side, you listen to channels, you listen to spiritual teachers, anybody will tell you, on the other side, it's all love, right? And everybody knows that they are connected to God and a piece and a part of God. This is part of being a soul. You are in the know. And so coming to this reality is like, all right, well, we all know what we know. So what would it be like not to know? You know, and so you come down here not to know, and we're here experiencing not knowing. And so 100% I feel like it's spiritual bypassing to say, I'm here not knowing now, but I want to go back to knowing out of my body, you know. So I'm here to be human. I would love being human, and I love all the little things and parts of being human. And I'll be honest, before coming to the Ascension and realizing really, you know, and embodying it and understanding, it's a rough life, you know, because you take everything at face value and you're like, damn, this is shitty. You know, you go through some parts and you're like, you know, what do I do with this? You know what I mean? And I'll be honest, I'll take this in a little bit of a new direction, but I don't know where I would be right now if I didn't come into this information, right? Because every so often I bump into an old friend who's just like robot status. You know what I mean? You are an NPC. You are straight up a robot on this planet. And we used to be like good friends, because I used to do a band and we almost got signed. We did a lot of Hollywood shows. But every so often, like I said, I come across one of those people and I'm like, damn, dude, like I have learned so much and I don't even know how I could function in that old me. It's like beyond me. How do you feel about that?
So I love that question. And so what I was saying is there's a certain, I experience personally, there's like a certain inevitability to the flows of our life. And I find that especially, everyone present here, and that includes all of us here on the panel, all of us who are tuning in, we have a certain, you could say, draw or emphasis towards this material. It's alive within us. And I kind of find one way or another, we connect with it because it's inherent to our, you could say, what's alive in us. That's how I'll put it. It's a frequency level. It's a resonance level draw. And so I find, with many that I talk to, because they're all over the world, like they may come across the material in a number of different ways, but synchronistically, and again, through the resonance itself, it always finds its way. Even if sometimes people just have spontaneous rememberings, or they have dreams, or they have, profound realizations. But, there was a period of time where I felt, a certain sense of, okay, I know the information. Oh man, these poor other people who don't know it yet. And I moved through life that way for a bit until I started to realize that everybody was having their own experience. And even, my own layers of consciousness, like I could reflect, to ways that I've operated years ago, ways that I'm being now. I started to realize, much like I don't judge, let's say, someone learning to ride a bike or someone, who's really into sports or not. I started to understand that each of these expressions of consciousness were some way, somehow, essential for this entire mapping that we are living and experiencing. And kind of like we mentioned, there is this eternal now moment, right? Which spans beyond the concept of past, present, and future, in which even if we were to consider all forms of ourselves exist at the exact same time and are therefore benefiting from our, let's say, ascension process. In that way, those who are, let's say, pretending temporarily to not know or be connected are themselves providing a valuable environment in order for me to live and express the way that I am. And so it brought this really interesting full circle moment for me, in which I could also then once again honor and reflect that, wow, during times I didn't feel connected, it certainly felt a lot more challenging, like, not to discount anyone's experience. But what I found when I remembered that was there was definitely a calming of my system, because it was no longer like I needed to ascend or have higher knowledge in order to fix parts of myself, because then that itself would be almost like a form of disconnection or bypassing from the nature of reality. To imagine that spiritual acumen actually removes me from the experience itself. And therefore, I think it was Natalia that said it was this understanding of the way through is through. The way through is in the embodiment, and to really experience it and receive it for all the levels it is. Because on one level, the higher we go, we're also creating a wider spectrum of drops. So it's not really about extremities. It's not really about extremities, at least from my perspective. It's not necessarily the goal, although you can have that experience too. So those are a few of my foods for thought.
Right on. No, I love it. And that's all super like on point. And I I'm feeling you on that because I'll leave it right there where you left it because I'll go off on a huge tangent. I want to let Sarah get in there before we lose track of the question again. Sarah, thinking about your old self before you came into this information, how do you feel about where you would have ended up if you wouldn't have come into this, and like others who are still in that kind of, we'll say, dark zone, not to belittle anybody or anything, but yeah, go for it.
Yeah. So this kind of, for me, the thing that's popping in is like parallel realities, because I've seen actually a parallel reality of mine that has not come into this information, only slightly. She ended up, succeeding as like a comedian and actress, and like wrote a book about intuition and stuff, but it didn't go as deep as I have in this reality. And I think that the thing that I really learned from that is the soul is here for growth on so many levels, and it's going to learn and soak up as much as it can. So then it's going to get super trippy with, parallel realities, timelines, like all these levels that exist within this one dimension, and everything the soul is soaking up. And so I think, if I hadn't come into the knowledge that I have right now that's continuing to grow, just on a very practical level, I think for me personally, I would be stuck in a lot of health issues. I would be stuck in a lot of occurrences happening in my life that would probably keep trying to push me into it. And I think that sometimes that resistance, and we're going back to the body, like, my body was talking to me so much through health issues of, we need you to step into this to have health and to be in your power and to heal and things like that. But I may keep ignoring those signals from the body if I hadn't allowed myself to step into this. And just on the notion of like NPCs and things like that, there's this thing, we can look at it from two perspectives of, okay, these are just like annoying bot people that like, are slowing me down in traffic or whatever. It's like, I don't want to have to deal with it. Maybe it's even family members, but, everything is here for a purpose, and perhaps those NPCs or these certain souls that don't really awaken, maybe they're here to actually assist us. I don't know if you all know who Amanda Ellis is. Do you know who she is, Felix? Okay. Yeah. So, years ago, I listened to her one time bring through a message for Easter, and she brought through Jesus and Judas. Judas. And she was saying that she felt as though Jesus could have come earlier, but he was waiting for a soul to step up and take on that role. So Judas maybe wasn't meant to come into this lifetime to be like this highly awakened soul. He was meant to trigger something so that Jesus could step into his role. And I think that a lot of people have that. And, we have people that we've taken on in our lifetime so that they can push us into this. And we may want to look at them as like, oh gosh, you're a muggle or whatever, but it's like you actually, in a way, you're helping me step into this higher consciousness, and like, thank you so much for taking on that role, because I'm sure it's not super easy for you either.
You're on point with that. That's a strike in my bowling alley, because I would place my kid's mother right in that bracket. It was 11 years. It was terribly difficult. And coming out of it, I was like, wow, there was a lot of judgment. You know what I mean? I was like, I was throwing daggers for a while, but ultimately, I came to the point where I was like, if I had never met her and I never had the kids and she didn't play her part, I would have never been pushed to choose myself. Because through the relationship, I was like, well, I've got my kid's mom and I've got my kids, and I my service is to them, and that was it, right? I was the provider, I was the father. And so throughout the whole thing, it was like Spirit was telling me, hey, you need to choose yourself. I had a boss that was like a narcissistic nightmare, or more than one of them actually. There was like two at once, and her. And so the whole time I'm trying to support everybody else, and the universe is telling me, nope, you need to choose yourself, or you're going to suffer the consequences, which I did, like exactly what you said. I ended up in the hospital and had diverticulitis and all kinds of digestive issues. And I believe it all came from resistance, pretty much exactly what you're saying. How do you feel, Natalia? If you had never come into this information, where do you think you would be at, and how do you feel about the NPCs that sometimes irritate the shit out of us?
Okay, so to start, I definitely would love to say that I could see a timeline where that doesn't happen. But honestly, knowing my life journey, that was not the case, because so many times from childhood, I had moments where spirit was putting me back into the timeline, and I kept like kind of postponing it up until there was this point where I got sexually harassed, almost, to the extent of what it was supposed to be. And how it happened, it was literally a miracle, because the person stopped by looking just above me and behind me, and there was nothing, because it was dark and it was, there's nothing behind. And in that moment, it shook my entire world. As I said, like I grew up, I had so many different activations. So I had also, used to see beyond the veil. Should I keep going?
Yeah, that's all right. Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. So back in my childhood, I had several experiences where one of them, for example, I used to see beyond the veil. But growing up in like a Christian environment, it was told it was satanic and demonic, and had to experience like exorcism and all these things. So I was consistently seeking spirit, like even, knowing that that was like the religious environment I was in. Like my mom was like, you're going to be a nun. Like I was literally just constantly in prayer mode from when I was a kid. And then so many times I went back into the allure of the matrix, growing up as a teenager, young adult, and realized when I look back, I was shape-shifting a lot. And I know there's so many different dimensions of shape-shifting, but what I meant is I was trying to blend in a lot with so many groups that I would literally take on, like I was like, let me dip my toes here and get into that social, like as if I'm like wearing like a suit, and it wouldn't work. Then plug into that, it wouldn't work. I just kept seeking something, went into immense depression, suicide. Like I really felt like there was something wrong, I used to think there's something wrong with me. Then I understood, okay, there's something wrong with the world. So there were consistently those moments in my life. That's why I can't foresee a timeline where that didn't happen, up until those moments like then that I had the harassment that just plugged me back, that like opened my eyes. Wait a second. There's something, there's something that just literally saved me right here, right there. Like I have to look into those things. And then I started noticing the same energy in different experiences. And the way I started breaking down, I was like, that feels like, when there's like an animal and predator and a prey, they like kind of sense something, smell something. So I was like, I think they're smelling something. That's how I started understanding like energy. That was the first step. So there were definitely moments that would plug me back into the timeline, and even until now. And then my light body activating didn't want it. It just happened spontaneously. So the way I see it is like this, my entire life is just devoted to spirit from when I was a kid. And that's where I'm at. I just cannot do anything. And it's just every time it's more and more of like how more devoted am I to light? How more am I devoted to the heart? How more am I devoted to the truth? It's just like, okay, keep coming back. It's like kind of this agreement that I have to keep going for with myself. Yeah. And in terms of like I'm someone that, again, I just didn't want to believe in so much the spiritual warfare. I didn't want to so much dive into those dark realms and those dark realities. Although as when I was a kid, I used to see things. I used to see everything, the good and the ugly. So I used to see demons and entities and everything. But when I started my path, I felt like I was gaslighting myself and being gaslit, also like allowing myself to be gaslit by the community of like, it's just an aspect of yourself, this is your mirror, everybody's a mirror, and then you find, a narcissist like you're describing, Felix, but it could be NPC or just a dark entity. And then like, oh no, this is an aspect of myself. So like, what is it teaching me? What is it? And it just got me further and further away from myself. And especially from the things that I have explored beyond the veil, like my spiritual out of body experiences. And then I was like, wait a second, I have to come back into full embrace of what I am and the truth that I believe in, even though it's bold, even though it's dark, it's not like all fluffy and unicorns, but I have to go through it. And so I'm someone that truly like know or go with that there is a spiritual warfare that we're living in almost on a day-to-day basis. And what we're here to do is to find ourselves out of it, literally like a goo or like something that's just plugging in. And we have to just unweave ourselves out of it back into truth and authenticity and what is, purity of living.
Yeah, 100%. I love it. That's, it's funny. I really love doing these conversations because we go round and round and everybody's explaining it from a slightly different perspective, but really we're all saying pretty much the same thing. And that's the awesome part. Let's go down this route for a minute. I feel, so like for me, myself, I think what I'm really going to offer into the community is, what I find is that our community, spiritual community, everybody's doing their own thing. Like each of you have your own spiritual teaching and the way you do it and the, sessions and the different things that you facilitate for people. One thing that kills me is that like once I started reaching out into the community to start doing this podcast, I found that there's actually not a lot of connectivity in our community. Everybody synchronistically is talking about the same thing, just like we're doing on this show, and offering different perspectives of the ascension and how to navigate through it. But there's not a lot of, I hate to use religion as an example because it's probably not the best example, but if you wanted to learn Christianity, you could find a church anywhere, right? You could go to somewhere to go and practice Buddhism, a Buddhist temple or an ashram somewhere if you want to do that. But when you're talking about spirituality, you have 100 billion different individual choices through each and every one of us, right? And I really want to take this into doing shows where like I'm doing live shows and invite you guys to come down and do talks and mix everybody up with some channelers, some ancient archaeologists, some of the guys who are still teaching Jesus stuff and make a pish posh of it. But I feel like a lot of what people are talking about in the community right now, especially when you get into like the people who can like project into the future and like see potential future timelines, we're looking at, I see a lot of projection that potentially the US may break up, and even Canada. And I've heard that from like a number of channels, right? Where we could have secessions. And I feel like we should be coming together and really starting to prepare for all of the potentiality that we're talking about, right? We're going through a really rough spot in humanity right now. We're seeing all the dark come out. People are like, oh, the world's going to shit. I don't see it that way. I see that all the stuff that's been operating in the background and getting away with manipulating us and operating as such in the background is just coming to light now. And so I feel like there should be more of a community of all of us where it's something more centralized. You know what I mean? How do you feel about that?
Topical conversation. And what I'll do is I'll speak a little bit on what I've sensed, and I'll speak a little bit on where I've been focusing authentically. I'll start it off by saying that a lot of my archetypes that I have related to through my life have actually been the hermit. I've definitely been someone who's related to that aloneness archetype, but at the same time, like all of us, really thrive on harmonic interconnection with community, with others. And what's been very alive in the last several years when I was doing, and we can call it future prediction and such. As like I've spoken a bit on it in this conversation that I experience it more as a resonance through the ever present now. And if you just feel all the potential possibilities or all the parallel experiences going on, you can notice where both an individual and also a collective has heightened focus. And so from that perspective, one could theoretically, apply probabilities or likelihood, like, well, there is a lot of like focus inside and out that appears to be pointing in this kind of direction. And so with that as a foundation point, I have seen and heard and experienced a lot of reflections of coming back into these community spheres or these community hubs. But it's like globalization, but also with these community hubs at the same time. So there's a micro and macro, at the same time, because right now we have a lot of that. You could say through the internet, right? The internet, I've always joked, is like a prosthetic for like telepathy. It's like a prosthetic for, being able to communicate, right? Beyond time and space. Right. Because we're in different time zones right now. We're in different locations and, we're interconnecting. And so in a lot of ways, I do view, when I have been observing nature, is I view that we're coming back to these synchronistic community ecosystems that also have hub-like relationships. I'm almost picturing, have you seen like how slime mold works? It has like these networks. It has like these hubs, and they all sort of kind of interconnect, and they grow or diminish based on the optimization of the resources or the focus. And so if you look at that and you overlay an energetic pattern, I see that moving into a community sphere, not because we're trying to find people, but because through the nature or the virtue of each of us, like, again, embodying and living our roles, we actually start to harmonically connect with others. We start to harmonically interface together. We start to do really seemingly practical stuff, but in ways that we deeply enjoy. So I think that that's a natural byproduct of what we're calling the Ascension process. I feel that it's a natural expression of us all moving in this way of inner harmonics meets outer resonance. And I do think that that's the direction we're going. It maps a lot of what I've seen in nature. And let's see, is there anything else that I feel like to add to that? Not at present, but what an excellent question.
Well, thank you. And I love the hub thing. Is something that I feel into as well. Like that resonates with me a lot, are the little hubs. Because I really, in all my studies and going down the rabbit hole of channeling and, all the predictions that happen. And, the ones that I find most resonant aren't predictions, but when they come through and they say potential timelines, right? This is a strong potential timeline. That's a strong potential. Because it's really like going to Vegas. Timelines can change at any point in time. So I don't like the word predictions or predicting, right? But I feel like we're heading to where government's breaking down a little bit. And we're going to be, like you said, there's going to be hubs where people are going to be more taking care of their own environment and themselves and each other rather than us depending on a big government. How do you feel about that, Sarah?
Yeah, there's a lot here in this one. Well, the first thing I want to say, and my guides talk about this all the time, of why they bring through dates or predictions. It's not to say this is what's going to happen. It's saying, here's this potential. Do you want this or not? And then we get to decide if we want to keep, following in that energy, if we want to manifest that timeline, or do we want to jump? Do we want to create something else? And a lot of, I always ask to see like, what's the highest possibility? So I feel like, some might be like, what's a possibility? So it depends too on like what maybe that person is asking for from their guides as well. But dates and predictions aren't here to be like, to entrap us. They're actually here to expand us. and, oh, I'm headed in this direction. Great. Now let me step into more of my power, more of my bigness of who I am, so that I can attract that thing that they're talking about. It's not just a given thing. So it's here to assist and expand us into higher possibility. But as far as, people coming together, if you think about your own awakening, you mentioned earlier, Felix, about how, okay, I don't have friends that I talk to anymore. I've kind of let some things go in my life, and careers, things like that. The same thing has to happen on a collective level as well. So these systems, the way things are set up, and there's a lot of people who are still dependent on those systems and those external things, and they're giving their power to it. So a lot of this collapse and this chaos that's happening is pushing people into this individuality and this power within themselves. And just like a relationship, you have to have two equal parts to make the relationship work. It can't be one person in their power and then they're trying to pull the other person into it. You have to meet as equals. So that's what we're becoming. And I mean, I could get into my guides have talked about how there's waves of us doing this. And I think there are a lot of us that have stepped more into that individual power. And we will start creating these types of communities. I've seen them. I love the way Danielle described it as these hubs. It totally resonates. I feel like I've seen it as like campuses. Like we're all going to have like a campus that we all live on and work together on and create. And everyone has a different role, but they're all in their individual power. That's why it works. And I feel like that's what we're being pushed into first. And that's going to look really chaotic. There are a lot of people who are very probably stuck in politics, or they're stuck in like a version of the medical system or something, and they have to be detached from it so that they can start coming into their own resonance and going from there. So I think that that's a huge aspect that a lot of the collective is going through.
Yeah, it's coming out of that dependency and going back into that almost our ancestors. And I mean, this is going to play big into you, Natalia, like going back into our ancestral roots where we're commune living, where you have like the medicine person and the chief and kind of like the ancient shamanic way of living. How do you feel? You feel like I feel like we're headed back towards that type of scenario where we're more in living in those type of situations.
So it just reminds me of a meme. I just gotta share it that I just saw that it was really funny. But basically, when you were born in a time when hearing voices and seeing things, you need to take medication for it rather than be called the shaman by the villagers. So when you said that like really just reminded me, of that meme. And I just wanted to highlight some point, because also where I live, in the Sacred Valley of Peru, it's truly is a returning back to the earth and to nature. And there's a lot of like ancestor codes that are present. So there's a lot of like the gatekeepers of the ancient codes, which are the Incas basically, because there's a lot of Inca presence here. And there's a lot of connection to Mother Earth and that kind of living. But also there's the contrast of that where there's also a very big spiritual community. That is where I find myself difficult, because you're mentioning about these things, right? Plugging into a hub. There is a hub here, and I yet find difficulty in connecting with that hub, with that community. So that brought up an aspect of it that is always wondering, as much as like, I also relate to being a hermit, because I feel it's part of, our refinement as well, like being able to rely on ourselves rather than, get out of that codependency we have to other things and the social structures. What worries me is that, as I said, in the spiritual community, there's a lot of bypassing, and there's a lot of like, there's this missing element of being real and raw. And at least that has been my experience, where I find it a big struggle to connect, to find people where we can connect and have a raw conversation, a real conversation from the heart, kind of call each other out on our BS. Like I honestly find that sometimes I can have that with people that are not on the path much easier. Whereas the people on the path, like immediately it goes into, oh no, it's your projection, just gaslighting, or like, oh, you have to look within yourself, or, a lot of those condescending aspects. and utilizing a lot of like the spiritual language as well, that is, you know, a bit more tricky to kind of navigate. So this is where my struggle is, to find something that is truly like authentic and raw and real, and a place that accepts, you know, accepts you for who you are rather than those spiritual facades, you know? So as much as there is this element here that I find like the valley calls in for, what you were saying, Felix, of like bringing back that ancestral living and the shamanic aspect, there is still a big shadow that is playing out. And so, but I feel that moving forward, like the next few years is really going to be a filtering out, because we're seeing it in the collective, that huge collapse of distortions, you know, and truth that is revealing. And I feel that is the same in our own personal life, to look within ourselves, but also in our relation and the spiritual community. Because if that is not going to change, I feel spiritual community is going to, like, it's going to collapse. Like a lot of like, you know, BS foundation in it. So that is a vision that I hold very strongly for the future, that more realness and more rawness is going to come through, and more truth.
Perfectly put, because that's exactly how I feel. Like the spiritual community, you know, and I love the love and light faction of our spiritual community, but keeping it real, you can't go all the way to the wall with that love and light. You know what I mean? It's just not, you know, we are not all going to be Buddhist meditators sitting in a cave and just sitting there for weeks at a time. You know, it's just not the role. We have too much diversity as human beings for everybody to go that. But I felt like, kind of like what you were saying, there's a little bit of a wave of the love and light kind of taking over too much, like everybody running to that, like, oh yeah, love and light, and there's too much BS underneath that to have like a really solid foundation. So
sorry, and also like a lot of giving power away to things, to modalities, to, here it's a very strong plant medicine hub, so everybody's like, you know, ayahuasca did that, and it's all like away, like giving their power away, even, you know, to the healers and the shamans here, rather than, and then when you confront it, like, come back, it's within you, you have it. And I'm sure each one can relate to this, you know, Danielle and Sarah, with what you transmit out as well, like, it's within you, guys, just bring it out. That's what we're here to remember. No longer give your power away because it's more, you know, attractive, or I don't know what it is, or just, you know, because you're scared of your power. I feel really that's what it comes down to. A lot of us fear our power and our light more than our shadows. We're very used to our stuff, to our shit, you know, but with the moment you step into and connect to your power and your light, you just fear it so much. Yeah.
Do you care if I add something?
Please jump in there.
You just saying too the thing about like love and light, and I think we kind of use, some people, I don't know, I'm sure I've done it at times where it's like, oh, I use that as the scapegoat where I don't want to look at the dark, but we keep forgetting, like, we live in this realm of duality. It's here to teach us too that we have this, you know, we're afraid to look at the dark. It's why we came here. Like it's to look at it, to have this like head-to-head conversation with it, and to not fear it. It wants us to do that, so then we can give our power away to it. And I feel like there's this, so yeah, standing in that sovereignty, and even things that are portraying themselves as I'm here to help you. It's help you come back into you, like you're saying, Natalia. It's like we don't want to give our power away to, you know, the Reiki healer or whatever it may be. It's the YouTube video. It's like, it's just helping us again remember our own essence.
Get in there, Danielle. I see it in your eyes.
I got it. I got it. No. I'm very much vibing with everyone shares, with Sarah and Natalia, with you too, Felix. Like, we're all here. A couple things that also came to mind, you know, I arrived at a similar place that Natalia did, like with the feeling a little disenfranchised from an expression of the spiritual community when it appeared to be, as you phrase it, gaslighty or bypassy, or it became this entire persona. And so it was like a new kind of mask that everyone's parading around in, and feels just a little slightly like spiritual Stepford wives or something, just a little slightly disconnected. And again, this is not a shame or blame on anyone who's done that, because I know I certainly have like done that at phases in my life, because I felt that that was the step to take, or, you know, I gotta like live it to have it. But something, you know, that I felt so inspired to speak on, you know, in the spirit of that, because I just get the sense that all of us here, but also anyone who's tuning in, is feeling, that call to authentic community, authentic hubs. One of the things when I was contemplating this for myself, because even though I mentioned, for example, like my hermity nature, something that has been extraordinarily true and very personal for me is that I'm like, oh, I am a yes to more authentic connection and collaboration. And where have been the places that I leaned into my hermitude to not make some more of those connections. Like, this is just very personal for me. And something I discovered was I was like, well, I kept saying to myself, my community is presenting in a specific spiritual way. And then I started going, well, if I'm not actually resonating with that, maybe I let go of the perception that my community is a spiritual hub or is this kind of hub or whatever. And I started to realize the places that I personally am the most excited to connect with people on is those who are embodying the walk of this personal remembering. And I realized that a lot of the people I vibe with, like, they may or may not even have the verbiage or context for the work, but in a very interesting way, they're living the work anyway. They're facing the inner self. They're embodying what it is to be them in the world. And so one of the things that I think is coming up is an exploration within the self of what could my community look like if I let go of my definitions on what that had to be. And if I started to really, really go all in with my version of myself, let that be apparent, and start connecting with those who resonate with that. What might we create? What might we connect? Maybe a completely different kind of community. And I'm curious how you guys resonate with that.
Highly, highly, highly resonate with that. That's like, you're talking about my dream right there. If there's any mission that I'm on, is to create a community where we're doing exactly that together. You know what I mean? Everybody using their various different talents. And I've got background in Hollywood. Like I was telling you guys earlier, I used to be in a band. We were almost going to get signed by DreamWorks Records, and 9/11 happened the week we were supposed to fly out to go do a garage demo. And so 9/11 essentially ended my Hollywood career. But, not without like, actually it was purposeful, not without purpose. Because I ended up here, and if that didn't happen, I would be a sex, drug, and rock and roll guy, with face paint and like Slayer style, death metal. But I'm definitely big time on my mission to create this community. And I mean, the reason why I brought up Hollywood and all that is that background gives me like a big perspective on like how marketing works, right? And how this kind of stuff can be presented to the public and how it's organized and the business aspect of it, promotions, all that. And that is where I see that the spiritual community is big time lacking, is in like a unified message. If we could come up with like an Ozfest of spirituality, now we're talking.
Yeah, I think that definitely would be amazing. Like I said, if the foundation of it is just, respect and self-responsibility and ownership, and I think that's the key and the code. And it doesn't even matter. Like I said, like, people might not necessarily be on the path, but you find that they're really true, kind people, like really heart-centered people that are devoted in their own way to become better people and have that own inner compass within them. I found that could also be a relational matter, because there is a huge facade that we're facing ourselves with. And you mentioned, Danielle, that in some way, even for myself, I'm like consistently asking, like, is that again a persona, a spiritual persona? And it's so multi-layered, because the mind again and the ego is so intelligent that it kind of grows with us as well. So that's why a lot of we think something, and then actually it's the ego that has been, present within our authentic self as well, and like making it seem like we're being our authentic self, but we're not really being it's just such a funny, tricky existence. And that's why I always feel like it's the way out is just to consistently look within and ask for more transparency and purity. Like, ask the intention behind everything we're doing. And that takes a lot of courage and takes a lot of humility and self-responsibility for one to look within themselves. So if that is the base or the code of that community, for me, that is it, 100%. If you're able to have those sorts of relations and connections, and you just call it out as it is. Not in a spiritual, like, you cannot say this. I don't know if you guys, it was like, sometimes like, you cannot use this language. Like, what do you mean? And then you find yourself, again, it's like a bit culty, and you're saying that, Felix, like another religion where, you know, in order to convey a message, you have to say it in that way, you know, in that language, within those circles. And if you don't say it in that way and it doesn't please necessarily their mind, they might not receive you at all. So yeah, I don't vibe with this. I don't resonate with this at all.
You got anything to add to that, Sarah?
Yeah, I think just bumping off everybody. Yeah, there's this thing of like vulnerability that I feel like we're talking about authenticity and coming into these communities and like being vulnerable. You know, there's this saying about shame, like if you claim it, then like the shame goes away. And it's almost like, I think sometimes too is being maybe even teachers in the spiritual realm. It's like, hey, I'm human too. I go through the same stuff you guys do. And it's like, I think not being afraid to claim like, man, I'm dealing with this. Like this is like the darkness that I'm moving through right now. And, instead of being like, no, I don't look at that. It's all love and light. It's all this. It's like, no, it is like, I think we have to understand what love and what light is. Light is information. It's showing us what's there. And love is loving ourselves enough to know that we're strong enough to face these sorts of things and experience them in a community and know that like we can be held and like come back into our power. But yeah, with the Hollywood thing, because I lived in LA too and did all that and, you know, was on the Fox lot auditioning for pilots and all that kind of stuff. And I just reached this point where I was like, this just feels so like dead. I don't know. There's just something about the energy of the industry. I was like, it felt inauthentic to me, whereas like I'm auditioning for things. I'm like, I don't even like this script, but my ego was like, I gotta have this. You gotta get it. And I'm like, why? Like, what does this do for the greater good? Like, I just felt like I want to actually do something that's going to have an impact for people and help them, you know, find more of their truth. And I think I had to find that for myself. And I think when we do that and we bring that all into community together, all this struggle and what we've learned through it and these deeper walks, it's going to be really powerful.
I think it's so interesting, Sarah, that you also had the background in Hollywood as well, or, you know, like that you had that connection point. It's interesting to actually see everyone's connection points in our chat here. Isn't that fascinating?
Yeah. What's your background?
My background is I was going to be an English teacher because I saw my English professor and they were the wildest, most zany creatures and somehow still made it in the world. And I'm like, there we go. That's my profession. I can be an English teacher, clearly. And then when I did that, I discovered an English teacher pulled me aside and said, don't do this job. One of my favorites was like, get out.
No way.
That was hilarious. And so I ended up being a marketer for many years. I was a marketer and, you know, again, connecting with people, understanding people. But it's funny that you said that thing where you're on the lot. You're like, how does this support the greater good? And there became a place where I'm like, well, I'm really good at this, but how does this support, you know, the greater? How is this creating what I want to see in the world? And that's where things started to shift. So I liked that juxtaposition right there.
Yeah. I feel like too, and I wonder if you guys feel this way. I've seen it as like we have these stages kind of in our life where everything feeds into the other, but you know, I wonder, Danielle and Felix, if you feel like what you did before, it almost feels like a completely other life, but you're getting pieces to bring into this one to actually help with the creation of, you know, this higher conscious plane or whatever you want to call it. But it's like we were just picking up some pieces and then we're taking whatever that system was and rewiring it to put it into the new one.
Yeah, no joke.
Yeah.
That's 100% how I see it. I mean, I have a whole huge backstory. I mean, I grew up in inner city Los Angeles, so I tell a lot of people I went to more funerals when I was younger than I did birthday parties, because LA was just like the wild, wild west like that. You know what I mean? People were just getting killed all over the place. And now I'm a single dad, you know, for like a year and a half now with 2 kids, and everything that I've ever done has played into a strength if I choose to use it that way. As long as I keep out of victim circumstance, you know what I mean? Where I'm like, oh man, poor me, I lived in the ghetto. Oh man, poor me, I struggled. Oh man, poor me, I got beat up when I was in elementary school. But I've never looked at it that way. So exactly to your point, everything I've ever done is coming into play, you know, especially like putting this podcast together. And I literally created a company shell for this. So this has like a marketing plan, it has a business plan, it has goals, there's a bank accounts and like everything set up. This is like a LLC shell, not just a podcast, so that I could do all the live events that I want to work on down the way. But all that experience that I picked up, all the marketing, and I was like the manager of the band, and all the booking the shows and the corporate work, you know, it all plays into it. Because if I didn't have that background in corporate and the communications, which being a Gemini helps a lot with, it would be hard to put these together. But being able to shoot off emails and having just that general knowledge plays right into exactly what I'm doing right now. 100%. So I'm going to ask you guys for your final, your message to the world. If you're going to give your final message, there's a meteor headed and we're going to say goodbye soon and the Earth is going to be blown up. What is your final message? No, we're not going to say that. Earth's not going to be blown up. Don't panic, folks. But what is your final message to the viewership and all the people out there?
You know, if there was one message I would share, it would be give yourself all the permission to live the version of reality that you most want to live, and give yourself permission to connect with the version that you know how to connect with now. If there's any part of your vision that seems to be locked in a time-based process, in a, well, first I got to figure this out or that out, what I found more and more is every single moment we are living the experiment experience. And anything that does require, let's say time, just as when you plant a seed and it takes time to get the roots and everything like this, well, doing our step, putting the seed in the soil in the first place, watering it, let it be, but then connect with the world around you, connect with the bugs that are crawling near the seed, live. If there was one thing I could say, be live, because you gave yourself the gift of living the consciousness experience. Get in your heart, out of your head more, and engage. And so much will make sense just moving in that way.
Beautifully put. Beautifully put. Natalia, last message, final message to humanity.
Okay, gosh, that was funny because when you said like we're dying, the very first thing I was like, don't go to the light, don't go to the light. You know, like after when you're about to leave your body. That'd be my message. No, but yeah, actually, I feel like I would just do a prayer. So would love everybody just to connect with me here and tune in. And I just want to breathe through your body, breathe through your heart. Then you can repeat after me, whether silently or out loud silently if you're unmuted. True God, source of all creation. Mother, Father, Source, I call upon you. Great Spirit, I call upon you. Higher self, I call upon you. Divine light and only light, I call upon you. I connect all of me to the divine grid and only the divine grid. I surrender myself, my light, my soul, my field, my consciousness to you, Great Spirit. I surrender my heart, my mind, my body, my life, my family, my home, to you, Great Spirit. And I ask and pray, I command, by the power of Great Spirit, that anything that does not belong to the divine great, to the divine light, and to your light, Great Spirit, is out of my body, out of my field, out of my life, out of my soul and consciousness right now. And so it is. Thank you.
And so it is.
This is such a powerful prayer just to do maybe every day, and you can replace anything, like any word you want. It could be your business, your work, but just literally surrendering all of your life, to Spirit. And you might notice that things start shifting in your life. Yeah, so you start doing more and more of it.
I love that you threw command in there. You said that you command. And I think that's one of the things that people are not emboldened to do, because inside they're like, where do I get the right to command something from Spirit or from the universe or whatever? But you do, we're all righteous pieces of God, right? We're all fractalized pieces of God. So you have a right to command your destiny. That's part of free choice.
And at the same time, like with the power of Spirit, because also that's another, I noticed like New Agey thing is like, it's all me, and I have this, and and I'm in control of everything in my life, and I also don't resonate so much with this, because that there's those miracles, and there's this grace of God, or this voice, this higher awareness that sometimes comes to you without you thinking of things, or miracles start unfolding for you. This is the work of Spirit, Great Spirit. So I feel like also understanding that you're surrendering to literally your spirit to do this magic and the work for you in your life, rather than just having that attitude of it's all me and I'm taking control of everything.
Yep, the surrendering on top of the commanding. Surrendering. This is a beautiful combination.
The thing I'm feeling like I want to say, and it's probably what Danielle and Natalia have said, is different words, is like learning to live life as the observer and with more curiosity. And it's almost like we take this step back to observe the choices that we're making. Where's my focus at right now? Am I focusing on my neighbor who's being loud and power washing the deck? Am I focusing on, this person who's annoying me and being slow in traffic? It's like, where am I focusing? Because that's where my energy is going. And I just want to share this little tidbit. We get to claim, this support that we want to bring forward. When we're trying to figure things out, we're stuck. We're kind of wrapping ourselves in this web so that we can't move. How do I do this? What do I do? I got to figure this out. It's like, what if we just let go, became the observer? We came into our heart and claimed like, okay, I feel like I want to share more of, the information that I get. I asked this one day, I was like, God, I want to be able to share more. I want to connect with more people. And I'm like, I'm ready to kind of like take things out a little bit more. And I remember claiming this and saying this to Spirit before I went to bed one night. And I was like, show me what to do. I don't know what to do. And I kid you not, that morning I woke up and in my email, I had 2 requests to be on podcasts. And then throughout the next couple of weeks, I got more and more requests to be on podcasts. And I was like, I see you, Spirit. Like, okay. I was just like, I see you. And I'm like, yeah, that's it. It's like, I just want to be able to connect and share and like bring through this information that I'm getting because I love it. And you'll get those nuggets. It's just going to show up, but it might seem subtle, and like feel that in your heart when you get it. It's like, oh, that sounds fun. That feels exciting. I'm going to follow that. And it's like, it can be that simple, like allow things to be that simple. We want to make them complicated. Like we have to figure it out, but literally we have all this unseen support around us that can bring us, you know, everything that we need
and want.
Yeah.
Depending. Some things you want, you don't need. So there's a bit of a paradox in that.
Yeah.
No, and I love everything that you guys just said. You know, this has been I knew it was going to be a great conversation, and it has been. I would like you guys to add in now. What do you guys have coming up? Like, what events do you have coming up? Is there anything you want to put out there in the world? Tell folks, you know, where to come and see you if you've got some live events. Let's start with you, Danielle. What you got going on?
Well, certainly. Well, I invite people to connect with me on the YouTube channel, True Self Alchemy with Danielle Lynn. And I also have a portal to receive my flow book, which is an attunement tool, very simple attunement tool. And you'll usually find it within the description links on the YouTube channel. But what I would say to, as far as live and coming up, one of the things that I regularly facilitate is I facilitate these portal experiences. They're group experiences. They're highly synchronistic. So I just began one right now at the start of June here. And whenever I offer them, they are, I would just say they're almost precise and highly attuned. And every single time they fill up to capacity, and we generally have a wait list. However, I always say to people, if this kind of experience, once again, it's a very synchronistic group experience in which everyone involved experiences both personal coherence, ahas, clicks into places, but you also have this incredible dynamic between you and others in the group. If someone wants to explore when the next one comes online, I would just invite them to go to either my site or on the YouTube and sign up for that newsletter through the flow book, because whenever those come through, that's where the announcements come out. And so if there's anything about what I've been discussing, or you simply feel the magnetism within you, that's the portal and pathway.
Beautiful, beautiful. Natalia, what you got coming up, and how can people connect with you?
Yeah, thanks for that opportunity, Felix. You can definitely find me on YouTube. I leave transmissions and energy updates almost on a weekly basis. And this is the support that I have for people to get to understand and translate their reality and how to navigate, you know, consciousness and the conscious path in that way. But also I support people like one-on-one online. So I have the quantum energy work, which is root cause oriented technology. So where we go into the quantum field and go into the root source program that is running, you know, the issue, the block, the pattern in your life. And that's where we recode it on an energetic level. And then the ripple starts happening in the physical. But also I support people with their light body activation. So if they had that spontaneous light body activation, or other people call Kundalini, and they're not able to integrate or translate that information, I also hold that container and hold space for them in that way. But the one that I'm the most excited about is actually my vision quests that I have down here in the Sacred Valley of Peru, because these are completely like paradigm shifts. They're like initiations for truly like the warriors of gods, the way showers, the ones that really feel like they're here to anchor in the light. And they want to do that huge inner deep work to completely like shatter illusions and distortions that they've placed on themselves or have been put on themselves, you know, to be able to reclaim that divine original code within them. And I have that upcoming in October, and also another one next year in April. But everything can be found on my website as well.
Beautiful, beautiful. I'm looking forward to jumping in with you guys. At some point in time, when I get time, I'm going to do all that. And I'm also looking forward to do like one-on-one follow-ups with each of you after this, which is another thing that I'd love to do. But before we get into any of that, Sarah, what do you got coming up?
Yeah. Okay. So yeah, one of the best places to find me to get channeled information. Sometimes I do personal shares is YouTube. And then I do some like quicker bites explaining things on TikTok. And then if you really want to go deep, one of the best places to do that with me is in Quantum Soul Academy. It's my online platform. I have courses in there and a membership where I connect with all of you. And this is about reconnecting to the soul and remembering ourselves at a soul level. And these are going to be deeper guided journeys to take you into like specific places within yourself so you can pull through that information, teach you really how to expand your intuition and really sharpen that skill. I really feel like it's one of the most important tools we need moving forward is that connection so we can have that intuitive discernment and when things start happening in the world. So that's a great place to connect with me. And then I do offer maybe like once a month or every other month, like live workshops or events over Zoom. And you can get on the list to do those at my website, which is sarahshooksoul.com. And then I have some live events that are coming up towards the end of this year and next year that I have scheduled. So I would love to be able to work with people in person and have that deeper connection there. And yeah, looking forward to that.
Wonderful, wonderful. And you guys out there in YouTube land, these are three wonderful ladies I've been following for a very long time, at least 2 years apiece. And you guys will get a lot out of doing anything that they offer. I guarantee you that much. We don't have a huge crowd here for Q&A, but we do have a question from Michael that I'll ask to each of you. And Michael asks, is awareness an inhibitor to focus?
You know, the funny thing is when I heard that, I almost took it from a creative standpoint. Like, oh, could it be? Like, how could we, how could we make it so? How could we construct it that it could be this way? And so it almost brought out my playful experimenter side of myself, that particular question. Because at least from my perspective, I have found reality is wild, and most of the time, if you can conceive something, there's a pathway for it to be so. But in the same way, if that's true, there's also a pathway for it to unbe so. And so, let's see, awareness could be inhibitor for focus. You know, the way that I hear that as well is we can bring it back here to my personal perspective. I don't see that it has to operate as such or needs to operate as such. I believe a person could create that outcome for themselves. I do find that sometimes when you suddenly have revelation or you have light body activation or anything else, it can suddenly bring your focus to this new experience you're having. So if you were previously focusing on something else, from that perspective, you could look at it as a derailment of focus. But I would say that would even depend on what we're quantifying as the focal point in this scenario. So I know I'm being a little playful with the answer overall, but if I was to keep it simple, it doesn't have to be personal experience. And that's where I'll leave it.
It's perfect. No, playful is wonderful. We don't want to be too serious here as spiritual people. You know what I mean? We might start breaking out crosses and making books and stuff like that. And we definitely don't want to do that. So the playfulness is always appreciated. How do you feel, Natalia, on that question? Is awareness an inhibitor to focus?
Okay, so that's a really interesting and potent question, and I'm going to respond to it from, the experience of shamanic space holding, because I'm going to give an example. So for example, in the Temazcal, in the sweat lodge, we're usually used to, in our day-to-day life, is like to focus on the breath. And by focusing on the breath, we kind of, get into that expanded state of awareness, and we allow ourselves to, get out of kind of disconnect to the body. In the Temazcal, it's the opposite. We tell people that they have to even let go even of their breath, because focusing on the breath will actually stop and hinder the experience. So that's one aspect of it. So my response to that is that it depends. It's actually It depends on the context. Because if you're in a different space holding experience, which can be, for example, with plant medicine, is you want to channel your focus. Because if you're someone that's super highly sensitive, and you can see that in your day-to-day reality, and you absorb energy, and you have all of that where you're picking up, your nervous system is picking up on everything around you. Actually, what you want to do is channel your focus, whether it is through your body, through your own energy, knowing what you are and what is not the other person. And through that channeling of the focus, it allows you to expand into higher state of awareness rather than just be kind of that lost energy, that, that absorber, or kind of that leaf in the wind where you don't know where you end and the other person, starts. So that's why I really feel it depends on the context. And what I would recommend is to trust and ask your body, ask yourself in that moment, what is required for you to get into what you need for the experience.
Beautifully put. Sarah.
Natalia, something you said just like popped in my brain. I was like, oh wow, I never even thought of this. Where it's like two sides of one coin. And I just heard in my head, like, but focus can be an inhibitor to awareness. If we're constantly focused on, like you said, the breath, then it's like we're missing an awareness that may want to come in for us. So I think it's almost like, we have both at once. Just like we can be focused on, cooking a meal, but we're also still in love and we're still in our heart, So it's like, can we allow everything to be there at the same time, that I'm having an awareness of my reality and my environment, but yet I'm also still focused, and they can all serve each other. And we're kind of shifting in these spaces within themselves all at the same time. And I think when we feel like we have to be in one thing or we get rigid about it, then it starts to inhibit and not allow all of it to be there, if that makes sense.
Now I'll add something a bit more radical. I have noticed, now when you say awareness, like you could come into awareness with an aha moment, right? And I will say that I have seen people come into awareness and turn into complete scatterbrains, right? They come into the awareness of the awakening, what they are, or some particular piece of information that empowers them, and then they're off to the races, and they can't stop talking about it, and they're like a little chicken with their head cut off, like going in circles and circles, and they're parroting stuff that they heard, and it's just, they're not giving it the time to soak in and to really take it in and understand it. And before you actually understand what you've taken in, you're out there blurting it out, and you've got, diarrhea of the mouth. And so I've seen awareness become an inhibitor to somebody progressing, because they feel like you were saying earlier, Natalia, they get that one piece of information and that becomes it. This is it. This is the one golden nugget that I need, and I'm going to go tell the whole world. And you're like, oh no, here we go. So awareness can be an inhibitor to focus, yes, but it can also destroy focus and cause chaos. With that, I'm going to say that's a perfect place to end it. And I want to thank you guys, and I appreciate you all coming on. And we've had some technical issues, and it took a while to organize this all together, but it worked out just fine. And everyone's going to love it when it hits YouTube. So thank you, everybody. I appreciate you guys coming on. This is the third recording for Omni-Awakened Evolution, the coffee shop. And we look forward to having you guys on for the next one.
Thank everybody.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.